think next year is going to be a challenging year for the entire industry. Next 18 months. The word I was getting at the Nationals from a lot of people that were kind of in the know with contacts outside of our world, the bodybuilding world, that when the investigating bodies get finished with baseball, as far as the steroid stuff, that they're going to hit bodybuilding. The talk was they're going to hit professional wrestling and bodybuilding, and I've noticed in the last 2 or 3 months that the WWE has been doing a lot of testing and suspending a lot of their top guys. And so I think he's trying to take the heat off himself before it ever comes. But as far as bodybuilding, I think we're going to catch a lot of heat in the next 2 years.
Well, really, though, we've never really discussed that much, but there was, I believe, a discussion about the issues related to actually doing testing. Part of the reasons maybe the testing isn't pursued so much is because it's a lot to handle. I mean, you get the lawyers involved, they're saying you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to do that. And it's like, well, why should the NPC take responsibility for that? Does it have a responsibility? I mean, it wouldn't seem so. You're putting on a bodybuilding, fitness, and figure show.
Well, it's bodybuilding. It's a muscle show. People pay to see the freaks. I mean, one year they tested the Olympia. I think it was the Olympia. And the guys were down maybe 5-6% in body weight, and they did not look the same. It was obvious. And it's obvious from the test it showed. There's only 1 or 2 in the whole United States that do very well. And it's because they got great promoters. But people don't want to come see these guys that are all juiced up. I mean, that's the name of our deal. It's bodybuilding. They want to see the biggest, freakiest thing up there. And each guy makes his own decision how far he's willing to go to reach that level, and that's a decision they got to make. Now, if they don't want to do that and want to compete against these guys that are all juiced up, well, take the consequences. You may not win. If you're genetically gifted, you may, but realize that's what you're going up against, and accept it, and that's just a fact.
Well, I find it interesting. Some of the major publications like Muscular Development, they talk about that on their radio show, and I think one of their co-hosts is on hormone replacement sorts of therapy and all sorts of things. There's all sorts of things out there that's kind of different, but I mean, and as we've spoken before, and as you've noted, if it wasn't for figure, for instance, where would the sport be today? So a lot of the people that are showing up for the shows aren't there just for the bodybuilding anymore.
That's right.
They're figure.
Right. Now on the national level, the bodybuilding figures have grown. Now, fitness, when it first started, had the high numbers, 150, 200 competitors, and it slowly now it's down to 30 or 40. And I think it's because it's so tough. The girls get injured. I mean, it's tremendous training and bouncing around on a hard surface. Figure was easier. Still training hard, but it's easier on your body than fitness. Fitness has saved a lot of local shows, a lot. Yeah. If it wasn't for that, I think the sport would be we'd be down maybe 5-6 shows.
Yeah, but
economically, it saved us. It really saved us.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, do you anticipate, though, even with the difficulties that you see that might be on the horizon, that we're looking forward to a pretty good year in terms of?
I think so, and it's all based on the promotion. I mean, if all the promoters worked as hard as Deacon Warner, we'd all have super shows, and promoters would be happy as all get out. But most of them don't work as hard as he does. They rest on how good their last show was, and what people will talk about, and they'll show up. But you're forgotten about very quickly in this sport. And if they don't get out and hustle as hard as they did last year or this year, they're not going to get the same response.
Well, in a criticism of the media that should be actually covering the sport more than they do, maybe I'm biased, but I'm in the media business. The sport's gotten a bad rap in the media in general. The big story, typically, like with the Arnold, the Olympia, if you do a Google search for news on bodybuilding, you get the steroid story. And that's not what the sport's about, really.
That's what we've been labeled with.
It's the lowest common denominator, maybe, though, as well.
For years at the national meetings, we've always talked, how are we going to get in the public mainstream? What do we do? What do we do? How do we prove our image? And finally, Mike Katz stood up at one meeting and said, we'll never be mainstream. We're a cult. We always have been. We're going to have our following, and just accept that fact. Let's work with what we got. We've created our own image. It's gone from a healthy thing to these big steroid freaks, and you can't get away from that. They're there. And you look at him and say, my God, there's no doubt what this guy's done to get where he's at. Even though he may be genetically gifted, he's juiced up. Would I want my son doing it? No.
Right.
No. No way.
But when you participate in the shows, that's not what you encounter. That's not what you preach at your shows and such. It's a whole different thing. Camaraderie, meet people, you have a good time.
Have a good time, meet people, make a friend, and all that kind of stuff. It's a cult. I mean, it's something, it gets into you and you enjoy it. I still enjoy training. I know I'll never compete it again, but I train just as hard as if I'm getting on stage next week. It's because I just love the feel of it. I love the pump and the whole mindset of what I can make my body do.
Right.
And it's an individual thing. I mean, I know I did it. I get out of it what I put into it. As far as mainstream public, we'll never be accepted, and we kind of did that to ourselves, the way we dress. You see guys walk around in the mall in a tank top all puffed up, and people look at them and say, what a freak. I mean, I ran into two people one time, two ladies, out of town that I knew, and we started talking in a mall, and they all dressed out in the bodybuilding gear, and they made the comment, it's so rude, people come up and ask us if we work out, and they're making comments, and I said to myself, well, what the hell do you expect? Look the way you're dressed, for God's sake. You're inviting comments. Right. Why don't you dress normal? Right. But through the magazines, and especially the magazines, they have created this image. This is the way women are supposed to dress and act and look. And this is the way the guys are supposed to, what you're supposed to wear and act and look. Carry around your water jug and let everybody know you're a bodybuilder. Well, it's like the guy who's trained in martial arts. He's a black belt. He don't go around chopping blocks in public and hitting people in the throat. He knows he's good. If you're a bodybuilder, you know you're good. You don't have to wear the tight shirts. You don't have to do all that.
Right.
You know.
Well, and that was an interesting thing about this meeting today. Even though you've got several pro men, pro women, they were dressed in plain clothes. You wouldn't have known.
You wouldn't have known.
You wouldn't have known.
You wouldn't know.
And that's really what's going on behind the scenes that people don't know, that are just looking at the ads and the flashy pictures in the magazines, or see the splash on the television.
Yeah. The best example of that, one time when Dorian Yates was really at his height, he guest posed for me at the Southeastern. 2 weeks later in New Orleans, I think it was the Junior USA or the USA that year, it was in New Orleans, he came walking through the hotel lobby and nobody noticed him. He was wearing a long sleeve shirt. He wasn't putting on a strut or a show. He was walking. You would never known he was as big as he was, and people didn't recognize him.
Wouldn't have known. I know Diana Cadu recently, even after being at the Olympia and being as shredded as she was, seeing her at the South Florida show over Thanksgiving in her regular plain clothes, you never would have known. Right. She just looks like a big girl.